Good morning, everybody, and I now call to order the meeting of the directors of Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation for Monday, December 10th, 2018. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting is being webcast. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask any questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, we welcome public comment on the items on the following agenda. After each item is presented and any comments are received from the directors, we will allow members of the public to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes and should only address the item that is under consideration. Before we begin the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has a potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on today's agenda. Hearing none, then I think we can now proceed. But before we proceed into the substantive portion of the meeting, I do want to recognize someone who is going to be leaving us at the end of this meeting after being on our board for 10 years, and that's Mike. And as we were just chatting a minute ago, and I think the first time I met you was like a tree lighting ceremony down at Canal side.
Yeah.
I think we would all agree that it's been quite a difference in the last 10 years of what we had then and what we have now. And just experiencing the Canal side tree lighting, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, was it, I think? Where we got the mayor and we got the lieutenant governor and Santa in the bumper cars. So it's very exciting, and I think you deserve a lot of that credit for being here for 10 years. I know your schedule has been wild, but you always have found time to be and participate and help us with these decisions and moving forward. So on behalf of the board and everybody else who would like to comment as well, and the staff at Erie Canal, we want to say thank you very much, and the watch is in the mail.
Okay. And if I may, I just
Please.
would, first of all, thank fellow board members and the chair and Mayor Brown and County Executive Poloncarz, both of whom I admire and respect. You folks are doing a great job. Empire State Development staff over the years. I know I've known Steve a long time, and all the other folks are done a great job in and out. The day in and day out folks. And I appreciate the corporation and the board recognize the role of the building trades in the Western New York economy and the construction economy, and how meaningful that is for me and all the members of the building trades. These are the folks we've been here since the beginning. We've built Western New York from City Hall to the medical campus to Canal Side. That's good work. Those are good jobs. They support families and folks who have a valuable contribution to the Western New York's economy and culture. So I appreciate all your support, and it's been a lot of ups and downs, but ultimately I know everyone has the best intentions and wants the very best for Western New York and folks who live here. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we can move into the meeting, and Steve Rinaldi to present a request for authorization to designate a Canal Side Design Committee member. Steve?
Thank you, Chairman Joya. As you know, we have several Canal Side design projects underway and more planned for the near future. Some of those coming up for this design review committee are the Children's Museum, the exterior signage, Heritage Point development by Sinatra and Company, the remaining parcel on the southern end of the Donovan block by the Benderson Development Company, as well as the North Odd block, which we'll touch on today. And all of these projects and other future ones are all required to meet the Canal Side design guidelines. These guidelines were prepared in July of 2009, revised in March 2010, and apply to all the development parcels within Canal Side. The emphasis of the guidelines is on public spaces, and the goals are to provide high-quality, attractive, and active spaces that employ contemporary techniques but connect to the unique history of the site and of the city as a whole. The purpose of the guidelines is to give direction and help provide an efficient review and response to proposed development actions. To facilitate this process, the corporation established the Design Review Committee in 2010, and it's composed of local professionals with training and/or expertise in urban, architectural, landscaping, design, construction, and development to review and make recommendations to the Board of Directors on the design of private development proposals at Canal Side with regard to their consistency with these guidelines. So again, the purpose of the Design Committee is to assist this board with the development, adoption, and implementation of the guidelines. And the committee's role is to help ensure that these guidelines in all development promote a cohesive atmosphere inspired by the architecture of Buffalo's historic Canal District. As originally drafted, the guidelines anticipated that the committee would be comprised of 3 members appointed by and serving at the discretion of the board, and the committee currently has 2 members. Number 1 is Rashawn Sanubi, and 2, Audrey Ross Sanders. So at this time, the board's being requested to appoint a new member to make up 3. That new member would be Mark Mistretta, to be designated as the 3rd member of ECHDC's Canal Side Design Committee member. Mark's currently the director of the Western District, New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Mark graduated from Rutgers with a degree in landscape architecture and is a registered landscape architect in New York State. Many of you know Mark as he's worked in the community for Wendell for over 27 years. He's been instrumental in implementing various regional initiatives in historic landscapes, including the Niagara River Greenway Plan, the Olmsted Park and Parkway System Master Plan and phased improvements, the Erie County Park System-wide Master Plan, and the City of Buffalo Waterfront Corridor Initiative. Mark's dedication, architectural insight, and outstanding leadership are paramount to the array of projects he's done, and he's also received awards and accolades from Business First, Leadership of Buffalo, and the Frederick Law Olmsted Award. I've personally known Mark for a number of years and had the chance to work with him here on the Ohio Street project, when Wendell led that design, as well as a number of greenway signage projects. His background and interest in the waterfront's history will serve us well as we look to develop the prime slip, the North Odd Block streets, as well as some changes to the Central Wharf in the coming years. So based upon that, I recommend approval by the directors to appoint Mark Mistretta as a member to the Canal Side Design Review Committee to assist the Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation with the development, adoption, and implementation of the Canal Side Design Guidelines issued by the corporation in July 2009 and revised March 2010, and to take all related actions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions or comments from the directors?
I would like to make a comment. I think Mark is going to be a tremendous asset, and he gets the big picture, he understands the historical significance, and he will really fight to do the right thing. It's what we need.
Anyone else? Mark?
Certainly, I think Mark Mistretta is perfect for the position. The only question I have is there a stated term, or is this is as long as he wants to stay and as long as the board wants him on?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item is carried. Now I'd like to call on Steve to present us with the next 2 reports. First, he will provide us with an update on the South Audbach redevelopment, and then he will provide us with his vice president's oral report. Steve?
Thanks again, Robert. The first item, the South Odd Block redevelopment, it's come to our attention.
These are for information. They do not require any voting going forward.
Okay. Again, the first item here is the South Dog Block redevelopment project. It came to our attention after the fact that there was a mistake with the August 20th, 2018 board materials regarding this project. As the purchase price was less than fair market value, public authorities law required us to provide information to support that below market transfer. Those board materials, and specifically at the top of page 6, it stated the names of the private parties who made an offer for the property, the value they offered, and the purpose for which the asset was sought to be used. Those materials stated that Savarino Companies offered a long-term lease rate of $1 per year for the purpose of redeveloping the site. And while this information is correct, it only reflects their original October 5th, 2017 offer and did not actually include Savarino's final and best offer that we received on January 19th, 2018. Savarino's final and best offer included a purchase price of $280,950. I'd like to assure the board that Savarino's best and final offer, including that purchase price of $280,950, was fully incorporated into the selection process. The final and best offer was used in our financial analysis conducted by ESD's real estate staff in New York, and this information was provided to the selection committee members when they scored and ultimately recommended the development proposal offered by Sinatra and Company Real Estate. So again, I would like to assure you that that staff's recommendation to select Sinatra and Company Real Estate remains valid.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
County Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to note for the record that the only reason that this is being discussed today is because I asked for a copy of the proposals that were submitted by all the parties after the vote in August. Primarily because I just wanted to see what were the differences between the proposals, because there were 3 proposals. The proposal from Sinatra Company, which was eventually voted on in the August meeting and approved, the proposal from Savarino Company, and the proposal from Douglas Development, which is Douglas Jamel, who's doing the one Seneca Tower project. At that time, I received a little bit of pushback with regard to providing the proposals, but eventually the proposals were all provided, and I have a copy of each of them here. It turns out that each one of the parties originally submitted a proposal, as Stephen noted, and in that original proposal, the Savarino proposal was for a lease for $1. But all parties were given the opportunity to submit additional proposals to sort of refine their proposals, and at that point, it's quite noticeable that the proposal from Savarino was for $280,950. I think this was a question, I shouldn't say I think, I know at the time of the vote, and I believe you asked the question, Connie, is this the highest best offer that we received with regards to the parcel? And we were told at the point, at that time, that yes, the highest and best offer that we received was for $1. I'm not making any assumptions that something was done for a deliberate manner. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think there was a mistake that was made, but it is a substantial mistake. It's a significant mistake, because one of the reasons I believe the board voted for the Sinatra proposal was that it was the highest best offer with regards to purchase price associated with the project. Lo and behold, when I actually reviewed the project papers, I realized that it was not the highest best offer. It was one that actually was 280,000 times higher, because they offered a purchase price of $280,000, $280,950. Also, at the time that we voted on this, it turns out that Sinatra Company was also late on a number of taxes across this community. That was not looked at nor revealed at that point. The last time I checked, as of a week and a half ago, Sinatra Company was current with all of its county taxes. I can't speak for the other entities that may exist out there. I think that's information that is very pertinent to the decision that was made by the board. It's quite possible that the best bid was the Sinatra Company bid, based on all the design specifications and the categories that were looked at by the staff. But I think it's fair to say, and this is an issue that many of us have had with this board in the past, is that we're not provided that information before the final vote. Provided a recommendation, but we're never provided the actual responses to the RFPs. We're never provided the actual scoring sheets. And in this situation here, if we had actually been provided that before the board vote, this issue would not be coming up because we would have known at the time of the board vote that the actual best purchase price that was offered for the parcel was not $1. It was $280,950, which may have had a different opinion with regards to what decisions the board makers or the board members take. I'm an ex officio board member. I do not have an official vote, neither does the mayor. But we do have a responsibility to serve the community to ensure that things are done properly with regards to this state entity. And I feel that if this information had come up to the board beforehand, it's possible a different decision would have been made. I have talked over with the chairman in the past about putting this up for reconsideration. As I said, I don't have a vote in this, but I want the other board members to feel comfortable that the decision that they made was an appropriate decision because the information that was provided at the time was incorrect. I think it's very important that everyone feel comfortable that the decision they make is an appropriate one. So what my decision with regards to who should be the best party in this doesn't really matter because I don't have a vote. I have an ex officio position, but I don't actually carry a vote with regards to the other board members. I do believe that this is something that the other board members should seriously consider a motion for reconsideration. And if so, and they choose Sinatra, they choose Sinatra. But I think it's important that all this information be provided, and the board members have made a determination based on what they feel is the accurate information associated with the project. I think this is another example of why we should be provided scoring sheets and we should have access to all of the documentation before a final decision is made in regards to what is a major project that is going to be located on that site for many years to come. When it comes to county government, I, as the county executive, and my departments can make a recommendation to the legislature on approval of contracts, but the legislature will never approve a contract unless they have the information on the other bidders. I think the city is pretty much the same way with regards to the mayor's office and the common council. And what we've been asked for over the past few years is to make approval of contracts and major decision without truthfully having all the information at hand to confirm that the recommendations from the staff are the best recommendations for this board to take. I do not believe that this was intentional to direct a particular project to one developer. I do agree that the original proposal that was submitted by Savarino was for a $1 lease. But after every party was given an opportunity to sharpen their pencils, the other two parties really didn't sharpen their pencils with regards to the purchase price. One did. And that information was not accurately described at the August meeting in which this was decided upon. And it causes consternation to me to have to then question whether any of the decisions that had previously been brought to the board were based on the most accurate information possible. I would hope it would be. But here's a situation where I just happen to want to take a look at the other proposals to see what they were. And when you look at, there's a little difference between the Savarino and the Sinatra proposal. There's a big difference between the Douglas development proposal and the other ones. And I could easily see why the Douglas development proposal was not recommended. However, there's not a big difference between the proposals between Sinatra as well as Savarino. And as a result, maybe the board would have wanted to do a different decision at that point if they had the accurate information at that time. I would hope in the future that we never have to deal with this situation again. As a result, I think it's imperative that all board members be provided access to the documents that justify the rationale as to why a particular recommendation is being made. And in the long run, that will create greater transparency and with regards to the public's eye that the board is doing the right thing with regards to the future development of Canal Side, but just as importantly, the public's money that's going into these projects. So I do not have an ability to vote. If I was a voting member, I'd be calling for a motion for reconsideration so that we could then, as a board, confirm whether we want this project to be going to the one particular developer or that this new information is such that we should be reconsidering the whole thing and potentially go to a different party.
Okay, a couple things, and in no particular order. Number one, every board member has the absolute right and opportunity to see anything and all documentation on any issue that is being considered for your review and hopefully subsequent approval. Not challenge, but this is a constant issue in any board, public, private, whatever it might be. To what level of governance does the board get into in reading the volumes of documents. Having said that, Mr. County Executive, I have to push back a bit on your suggestion that this was not the highest and best offer for the property. The answer, I would respond that the review by staff involved 11 different criteria. In particular, one criteria, yes, they were the best. But I think, and I know that they reviewed each of the proposals. Now, what could have resolved this debate had we seen the scoring sheet? And maybe going forward, we provide and distribute this type of information in a manner that is consistent with other public authorities in order to make sure that we are convinced that all the information is being shared to everyone at the same time. So it really comes down to, and I thank you for your additional comments about that, while there is no, you're not implying anything, I can assure you that we will make sure that going forward that the information is provided in a manner that is comfortable for each board member in a timely manner. Unfortunately, in some cases, the information is received in a pretty short time frame between the receipt of the information and the board meeting, which is something that we will continue to try and work with. So, that's...
If I may, just with regards to your first point regarding access, I certainly hope that all board members would have access. I would note that this decision was held on Monday, August 20th, and we did not even get the packet of materials with regards to stating what was even going to be on the agenda until Friday, August 17th. And this is all the materials here with regards to the proposals. And it took a lot of discussion between myself and some of the staff members with regards to this, and previously Chris Shefflin, with regards to this. And I don't believe that, truthfully, 2 days over a weekend would have been sufficient for any board member to go through all these materials and determine, based on that information, what they felt was the best responsible offer. This is a problem I've had with the board for quite some time, to the point where at least it's better we're getting the materials before the day of the actual vote, which was not the case. And truthfully, I know it's made in New York City, so I would hope that you folks would actually give us more than 2 or 3 days or a weekend to review this material in the future. I enjoyed the eye rolling. I think it's important that we actually, the people who are voting on this, have the opportunity to see what we're voting on before a substantial time when it comes to a long-term issue. I understand it takes time to put these things together. Our legislature will sit on stuff for months before they have an opportunity to approve it, not 48 hours. And I think it's very incumbent upon all the board members having accurate information that they have the opportunity to review this. And in knowing what's actually going to be on the agenda, I can tell you, because I know it was received on August 17th, that I had no idea, and I don't think any other board member had any idea what was going to be on the agenda the following Monday, including a very big decision. And it's just something that we dealt with over time, and I understand that the final board packets come from New York City. And I think it's incumbent upon them to provide us the information in a much more timely period than what we've been receiving. And if that's the case, maybe we would not be here today discussing it, because then I might have actually looked at the stuff before the actual vote and realized what the dollar value of the bid was from Savarino.
Any other questions or comments from any board members? Connie?
I'm in full agreement that we need to receive our materials in a more timely fashion. These are huge decisions, and we need to be able to talk to each other and discuss things. And in the limited time that we do receive things, it's a lot to digest and think over and make a good decision on. So I'm in full agreement with you. Now, I would like to say that since that August date, we have been receiving updates from Steve on things that are going to be moving forward, that it's not the final packet or final information, but he is definitely keeping us posted on upcoming decisions that need to be made.
Any other questions or comments? In respect to the county executive's suggestion, he's asked if the board is willing to reconsider and revote on this issue. If they are, I will certainly entertain a motion to have that.
You have assured us that this was the best offer. You've looked at all the criteria. You reported it to us in error, what you reported, but you're not telling us there was any error on your part. You looked at the correct numbers. Is that right?
Correct.
Right?
That is correct.
And you looked at all criteria for all bidders. And we've gone back and looked at it again since the county executive asked you to or brought this up, and you still feel this is the appropriate decision.
Yes, we do. We stand by the recommendation.
Would you like to comment on your discussion, well, now that I'm bringing it up, you have no choice.
Right, it's out there.
About how you will, going forward, you will review issues like current tax liabilities, et cetera. I know you're working with other agencies to be consistent.
Right. Well, I would say for this, again, to be clear, that the recommendation was based on 11 different categories that were scored, that the purchase price, including the CAMs, offered was one of those 11 criteria. And certainly, there are differences and nuances, I think, within the proposal that led us to this decision and why we selected Sinatra. But we've met with ECIDA staff since earlier conversations with the county executive, and obviously some of the tax certification things. And Mark stated earlier that they are current on taxes. We continue to work with them to ensure that they're current on all their taxes as well. But we go through a thorough review both here and in New York City for all of these proposals, whether it's a development proposal or consultant team proposal or anything else. And we're confident we have the right selection for this project.
Okay. Not having a first or a second, we'll move into your oral report.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted, again, to update folks on where we are with a couple of projects. First off is the North Odd Block. I mentioned that as part of the Design Review Committee board materials. But earlier this summer, the governor, with some help from Howard Zemsky, Congressman Higgins, Mayor Brown was there, and Assemblyman Ryan, there was an announcement for $24 million in new waterfront projects. $10 million of that was earmarked for the North Odd Block at the time. We've taken the first step toward redeveloping this nearly 2-acre parcel by advertising for a design team to help us with the public infrastructure necessary to move the site forward. We expect the project to include underground parking, interpreted historic streets, utilities, and structural foundations. And all of these elements taken together, once configured, will set the development parcels on the North Odd Block between the canals and the 190. Consultant proposals are due on January 17th, 2019, and we will have a public involvement process that we will develop with the selected team, and we'll implement that during the planning phase of the project, likely to begin next year. I just want to let everybody know that that is out. We're also working on the Long Shed building with the Buffalo Maritime Center to build their packet boat. Again, this was also announced this summer as part of the funding announcement. The Long Shed building is a flexible space building that would interpret the Newman and Scoville ship handlers store that was along the Central Wharf at the corner of Prime and Lloyd back in the 1870s. And this year-round structure will first be used by the Maritime Center to construct a replica packet boat. And after the boat's completed, it will be docked at the commercial slip at Canalside, and then the building will be used by other cultural partners and eventually to help us celebrate the bicentennial of the Erie Canal in 2025. This project's received a ton of attention since it was announced. The Maritime Center has done a fantastic job of spreading that word, doing a number of speaking engagements at different events and meetings and lectures. They've had about 350 people in attendance at some of those things just to hear about this project, so obviously they're excited. And we're getting close on the design plans for the project. But before we submit those to City Hall, we are going to hold a public information meeting next Tuesday, December 18th, at the Buffalo History Museum from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And this will be sort of a last presentation before we submit to the city so that folks can see the building plans and hear about the packet boat once again. So I want to let everybody know about that. And speaking of public meetings, on November 19th, over 150 people joined us at our second open house on the Outer Harbor project. There we had multiple plans that were presented for the first Buffalo River Marina, the area from Wilkeson Point down to Bell Slip, as well as Terminal B. And so everyone knows we have an online survey that's still open. We've already seen over 200 people complete that questionnaire in the first 2 weeks, but the online survey remains open through December 23rd and can be found at our outerharborbuffalo.com website. So we hope to continue that outreach process for probably the next couple months into the first quarter of 2019. We'll continue to narrow down the ideas with the public's help and have a preferred concept plan, at which point we will have our final public open house in the spring of next year. And that is it for my update.
Thank you, Steve. Any other business?
Chairman, I think everybody on this board knows I have a issue with the requirement of waivers to be for people who skate at Canal Side. As a hockey player, as somebody who's skated his entire life at many public facilities and never having been required to have signed a waiver, it just seemed viscerally wrong. I understand that it had been in place for a number of years. I don't think anybody, at least I never knew it, and I don't know if it was ever officially approved originally by the board, because it's been in place for 4 years, and I know I've been on the board for more than 4 years now. I shared information with my fellow board members with regards to New York law, with regards to New York General Obligations Law, Section 5-326, which says agreements, which is entitled Agreements Exempting Pools, Gymnasiums, Places of Public Amusement or Recreation as similar establishments from liability for negligence, void, and unenforceable. The law goes into greater detail about how it's against public policy of the state of New York to require a waiver for any recreational facility in which you charge a fee. The county does not require waivers. We may have some individuals who rent facilities, but we do not require, nor do we request a waiver to be signed by any of the participants as part of those festivities that occur with regards to facilities that may be rented at county parks. And there's just something I don't like about a publicly owned facility requiring a waiver from individuals to enjoy the publicly owned facility, especially after they pay a fee to use the facility. So I think it's publicly known that I object to this. I'm not certain if the board will act. I understand that this may have an impact on insurance. We do require insurance from any party that rents our facility, as I said, but once again, we do not require waivers. And New York State General Obligation Law is pretty clear that the waivers are null and void with regards to any potential enforcement of limitation of liability. So if they are, why are we requiring them in the first place?
Steve?
I know we have exchanged some information back and forth on General Obligations Law 5-326. I think that for us, you know, there's a few things out there. I think that law does not prohibit the use of a waiver at Canal Side. We also think that in the case where there is litigation brought, that having used a waiver could be used in the court case. All of these things, I think, at the end of the day, bring down the cost, along, you know, keeping our insurance costs low with the use of a waiver, which is considered a best management practice, keeps the cost of the insurance low, which ultimately keeps the cost of enjoying the ice low. We're renting ice bikes, curling equipment, now ice bumper cars in addition to skates. And there also is some precedent that having a waiver for the rental of equipment to do that activity isn't actually enforceable. So I would just say, you know, we believe that it is a best management practice. It's quite typical in many cases. And we think we're keeping the overall cost low enough that our customers can enjoy these activities. We're going to consider dropping a waiver, doing something different. I do expect the cost to go up, and will likely have to be passed on to the customer.
Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or comments from?
I would just note, we are a division of New York State, and New York State Assembly, the Senate, and the Governor passed a law that says these are void as against public policy. And there's a lot of management best practices that the government then comes and determines are inappropriate. And I think there's a perfect example of one. I really doubt that this will cause any increase in insurance costs because I'm fairly confident that the amount of insurance that's being paid right now by our vendor that uses the facility, Be Our Guest, is quite high. And I just think as an arm of the government, we should be following the law.
Well, I don't know that this is the proper forum to get into some legal debate back and forth from each side as to how we are not a public entity, we are a public authority, which has difference of liability and et cetera, but I don't want to keep everyone from finishing their day on a timely basis. We will have internal discussions about it. I think ultimately, it's this board's responsibility to protect the assets of the institution, and I think I agree with the policy that's in place to have waivers and hopefully not only keep the costs down, but to ensure safety of those others within the space that's being managed by a third party. And I know that the third party is required to have insurance, and I think in discussions with them, how we act on this waiver can and will affect the cost of that insurance, which then begs the question of where does that cost get applied, and going forward, we try to keep as much of the activity on the waterfront free of charge, and at some point there has to be some cost borne by those that are using it. So I think we will, Mr. County Executive, we certainly hear what you're saying. We will continue to look at this, and if there is opportunity, if there's a way to revise this policy and consistent with some of your thinking, we will certainly attempt to do that. Okay?
I have a question.
Sure.
So this is a matter of law, not pushback from the public in regards to signing the waiver that you're aware of?
I have had individuals reach out to my office about why are we requiring a waiver when the city doesn't require a waiver to skate at its hockey rinks. County does not require a waiver for people to sled. And the law is pretty clear, as well as the case law. I don't want to get into case law, but I went through case law. And it's many times in the past, businesses have tried to use a waiver as an example of getting out of the negligence associated with an incident that occurred, and the courts are pretty clear that under New York law, it's clear. You can't use a waiver to avoid the negligence associated with anything that happened at your facility. I have received some calls, as well as my own, as I said, personal, visceral feeling that public facilities, and whether it's a state authority or state entity, however you want to describe it, it's an arm of the state. We would not be here with, except for, as that picture shows there, the seal of New York State in the background at Empire State Development. How can we expect to tell somebody who's a private entity who says that they're going to require waivers, that the waivers are invalid if we ourselves saying that we as an entity think we are going to have them anyway when the law is pretty clear? I mean, we could spend a lot of time, the chairman's right. I don't often put my legal hat on, I'm still a lawyer, and when I go through, and you can read the case law and the things associated, but it's pretty clear. When the state says it is against public policy to do something, that's a pretty high standard that's impossible to overcome.
Well, let us go back and take a look at it as we advance the management contract,
Okay.
and we'll see what we can do.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Before we adjourn, I do want to wish everybody, their families, and everyone and their friends a very happy holiday season and a safe one. And with that, I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Carried. You are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your service.